Hey gang, it's Seth. Happy Friday again. I'm going to do a video on what I'm calling the Islamist Apologist Sleight of Hand. I was watching one of a couple videos. I was watching a couple Tommy Robinson videos, and I kept hearing something talking about the Islamic apologists talking about how, oh, you say this about Muslims, but in the Holy Book, the Quran, Muhammad, the Hadiths all talk about the Christians and Jews being various forms of brothers of the book or brothers of the Abrahamic religion, which, first of all, it's intellectually dishonest in and of itself, because I don't think most Muslims even understand what abrogation is and how that works in their religion, where certain texts are made obsolete by more current ones. So, just for thought exercise, for example, they may say in chapter 1 of said book, we'll do this, but in chapter 50 they say do this, even though in chapter 1 we said do this, and it goes by the most current version. But this is just a pretty common rhetorical response to play on the fact that the majority of people are Jews or Christians, and they're talking about this. And most people don't think beyond the statement. Don't even think, because it's so it's trivial in debating it, and people don't think it's worth it. But here's something I want you to think about: that not once have I ever, not once, not even remotely, any way, shape, or form, subtly, not even at all, brought into the debate, public forum, discussion, or anything like that. Okay? How do Muslims, based on their religious texts and based on Muhammad, treat those not from the Abrahamic religions? What about Sikhs? What about Hindus and Buddhists? What about atheists? Atheism aside, there's a term for non-Abrahamic believers, and it's called shirk or sirk. So they got their word for it, right? So it's a good thing. So what does that mean, you ask? Well, it's a sin in the Muslim faith of worshiping any god or gods that is not the one true God, which is Allah. Hindus and Sikhs are two of the most affected groups, suffering historical massacres, atrocities, ethnic cleansing, subjugation, murder, oppression at the hands of the religion of peace. Unlike the Abrahamic religions, there's no exception given for these other religions. So I want you to think about that and mull on it. Like, just take a moment and let that sink in. If you ever listen to it and engage to or watch debates in these, how many times have you heard that rhetorical, almost obligatory, dismissive, or way to dismiss a statement saying we treat the Abrahamic religions the same? Even though, again, the reason that's disingenuous and dishonest to anyone who can think beyond it is, how are you treated peacefully? Well, you can pay a tax that will arbitrarily dictate. There's no percentage that it says in the Quran what to do. So it could be 90%, 50%, 10%, somewhere in between, whatever. As long as you pass that tax, we won't kill you. But you can't really vote. You can't do anything. Your movement's going to be restricted. You can't worship. You can't open a church. You can't outwardly worship. You can't go against any of the customs of the area. But, you're still free. But they just completely skip this over. Now, there's been, to my knowledge at least, 3 separate gurus of the Sikh faith who were tortured and killed and murdered because of their refusal to bow to Islam. For those of you unaware, and to keep things simple, gurus are, I guess, kind of like what would be considered the Pope in a way, but they're not. They have a lot more divine presence. So there wasn't always, and there's not now, I don't believe. I think the last guru said he was the last guru. They're supposed to be like intrinsically, divinely linked directly to the higher power. If that makes sense. So you could argue kind of prophets, but it's slightly nuanced because of the difference of the way they view their faith. So they've killed the 3 of them. So that'd be just like kind of Muslim historically going and killing the Pope, or us going killing. I mean, Muslims don't have a leader, but an imam or something like that. So just to put this into perspective, okay? There's like 1.56 or 1.6 or 7 billion Muslims, okay? And they say, okay, for the 2.2 Christians and the 14 million Jews, you guys are good. With asterisks, because you're really not. As long as you pay the taxes, you're kind of okay. Just don't get all lippy and go all crazy thinking you can be free and stuff. There's over 1 billion Hindus, 300 million Buddhists, 30 million Sikhs, 300 million regional religions, which would be more, I guess, like shamanistic or tribal, if that makes sense, underdeveloped societies. But then you have over 1 billion atheists, secularists, or non-religious people. So what do those people have to look forward to under Sharia law? Death. Now, I was just spending some time, just to kill my time, I went to a couple forums that were talking, they were Islamic forums talking about Sikhs specifically. And I pulled some quotes. These are quotes from Muslims about Sikhs. Where are I? Muslims also believe that Mohammed is the last messenger sent to mankind, so any religion after Islam is 100% false. End quote. Quote, Sikhs barely hold any significance in the world, and their satanic religion is declining. End quote. Quote, because mushriks are ugly, which is part of the reason that that form was why we don't like Sikhs. So, because mushriks are ugly. Now, I talked up above about shirk or shirk. Anyone who is guilty of that sin is a mushrik. So that's what they're talking about. They're ugly sinners and don't even deserve any kind of respect or anything like that. Now, where was I? Quote, as long as a woman is Sikh, then a Muslim cannot marry her from a Sharia point of view. This was people discussing so for example, a Sikh has no issues marrying a Muslim, but apparently, under Sharia you can't go outside that. Where was I? Quote, I have a very strong dislike towards Sikhs. One sexually assaulted my sister. I am still planning revenge for all of them. End quote. Quote, I don't think I've spoken to any Sikhs. I didn't know all of them hated us. So this is just some guy who's never met a Sikh, but now because of the way that his Muslim brothers are telling him, he's under the impression, oh, all Sikhs hate him. Where was I? Yes, they have poor hygiene, which is because, so I don't know how many do not know, Sikh specific, they don't cut their body hair, or they have very, very controlled ways at which they can trim their body hair. They're not supposed to ever cut their beard specifically, and there's other things, but that's not important. Sikh people are vile, evil, hypocritical people. Next one is, the media always targets Muslims and says things like burqas should be banned. Why not ban Sikh turbans? Heads up. When was the last time a Sikh blew someone up? Think about that. It's haram/forbidden for a Muslim woman to marry a disbeliever, even if he is a Jew and a Christian, or Jew or a Christian. It's in the Quran. Muslims cannot befriend Sikhs and others, but can coexist with them, provided they're not attacked in any sense. Now remember, attacked to a Muslim could be something as vile as wearing a cross or opening a church. Or just like now, on parts of the UK, France, Spain, I believe, Germany, you'll get ridiculed, accosted, threatened if you do something like walk down the street and drink a beer. So don't do that. You're safe as long as you don't do that. You're good. What time are we at? 9 minutes-ish. Muslims cannot befriend Sikhs and coexist. Did that one? I heard Sikhs cannot cut their hair until they wash it in the blood of a Muslim. Okay, so they're talking about the fact that there are lots of Muslims who say you cannot even be friends with a non-Muslim unless you are secretly trying to convert them to Islam. So if a Muslim is not trying to convert you, quote, they are jahil, a term I didn't look up, but they talk about it loosely referring to someone who is not a true believer. They're just a fair weather Muslim, okay? So you are jahil. Either that or he has no love for you since he is not trying to convert you. Now this part is interesting, and this is the last two quotes. I'll talk about them, why they're important. No one can be forced to convert to Islam. If you forced someone, they would not be a real Muslim. And then I talked about the gurus being killed, specifically about Guru Bahudar. A Muslim justified it because, quote, he was asked to perform miracles, and on refusing, he was beheaded. Now, with those two things in context, I want you to just think about something. No one can be forced to become a Muslim. We can just threaten to chop your head off. So we can't make you. You're not going to. We're not forcing you. We're just going to cut your head off if you don't. Especially if you have the audacity to not perform a miracle because we think that you should. These are the backwards thinking, non-educated, barbaric, and primitive beliefs that a lot of Muslims have. And I don't mean that offensively, but a lot of them are not educated. I would argue people like me are vaguely more educated on a lot of Muslims who for to use a better term, fair weather Muslims. People like who are critical of religions read more and study more than people who practice it, because a lot of the Muslims all over the world are I don't want to say third world, but arguably they're from tribalistic places where they're not going and getting educated on it. They may have a local imam and practice certain aspects of everyday Muslim beliefs, but they don't know the hows and the whys and where they're quoted from and what happened historically, the historical context, abrogation, the various books, what parts of what books come from what Muhammad was, what he was about. They just know that they're told you're Muslim and this is what you do, this is what a Muslim does and doesn't do. And that's it. So think about that. Let me know your comments below. Hope you have a great day, gang. Happy Friday again, and go easy.